Black Ariel, Black Cleopatra, Indian Velma, Latina Snow White, and Trans Gandalf. That last one was a joke, but I bet it still caused some outrage. For over a decade now, Hollywood has been race swapping beloved characters, and in the case of Cleopatra, even rewriting historical figures. These bold changes have sparked explosive backlash, igniting firestorms across social media. So here's a big question: is the backlash justified, or is it just disgusting racism? That's the fight everyone seems to have, but there's one deeper question almost no one is asking. Why? Why change the race of iconic established characters? Is it representation, marketing, politics, or something else entirely? In this video, we're diving into deeper reasons behind Hollywood's most controversial casting choices, and by the end, you may walk away angry, enlightened, or maybe even both. Before we dive into why studios have been race swapping characters, we need to define exactly what race swapping is. Race swapping: recasting or reimagining traditionally white or more rarely other ethnic characters with actors of different race. Like much of American politics today, race swapping is a deeply polarizing topic. On the far left, it's often championed as a step towards long overdue representation. On the far right, it's condemned as yet another symptom on a woke agenda hijacking culture. And in the middle, you'll find people who are indifferent, quietly supportive, or slightly disapproving, unsure where they stand. It's worth noting that race swapping isn't some brand new trend. It actually dates back as far as the 1960s. Some early high-profile examples include Aretha Kitt as Catwoman in the 1960s TV series, Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent in 1989's Batman, Michael Clarke Duncan as Kingpin in Daredevil, and even Elizabeth Taylor portraying Cleopatra, a historical figure widely believed to be of Greek and Egyptian descent. Even The Wizard of Oz got a bold reinterpretation with The Wiz, a full remake featuring an all-black cast. And while there was some backlash to these castings, it was nothing compared to the firestorm we see today. So why the difference? Well, it could be the sheer scale of modern blockbusters. Think Disney live-action remakes, Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the endless streams of reboots. Or maybe it's the rise of hyperactive fan culture and the echo chambers of social media outrage, where personal ideologies get amplified, debated, and attacked in real time. What's really driving the cultural transformation in Hollywood? Global market appeal. There's no denying that Hollywood relies heavily on international markets. Countries like China, Japan, South Korea, and the UK are huge sources of income and can often make or break whether a film is seen as a success. Because of that, there is a strong business incentive behind Hollywood's diversity push. Having a wide range of faces on screen can help reach a wider, more global audience. And yes, there's data to back this up. The UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report, which has tracked trends for over a decade, shows a certain pattern. Films with more diverse casts make much more money. In 2023, movies where 31 to 40% of the cast were people of color had the highest median global box office, around $120 million. A perfect example, the Fast and Furious franchise. Not only is the cast incredibly diverse, but the studio even made an entire movie set in Tokyo, long before diversity was a trending topic. While Fast and Furious doesn't race swap characters directly, it proves that diverse cast work and sells. On the flip side, movies with mostly white cast, less than 11% diversity, consistently earn less. Researchers say today, audiences want to see stories that reflect the real world, and the numbers prove it. In 2023, audiences of color made up the majority of opening weekend ticket sales for 14 of the year's top 20 films. Households of color have made up a disproportionate share of moviegoers overall. Diversity doesn't just work at home, it works globally. Movies like Black Panther earned over $646 million internationally, and Fast and Furious continues to pull in around 70% of its revenue from overseas markets. That said, there is a twist. Race swapping in certain situations has still sparked backlash in overseas markets. Take The Little Mermaid. While it performed well in the US, it struggled in overseas markets, especially in China and South Korea, where the box office numbers were noticeably low. Rage bait marketing and cash grab. Before Cleopatra was black, before Velma was Indian, how many of you cared or even knew about these TV shows? Online backlash can create millions of impressions and discussions, and rage bait is the best form of advertising. The internet is heavily polarized. Most often than not, you will only see the extremes. The far right, the far left, red pill, feminists, vegans, meat lovers. Rarely is there an in-between. The scientific word for this is polarization. Take YouTube for example. Though it's disabled its dislike button, it still plays a valuable function in understanding the quality of content. Why? Because disliking a video is engagement, and engagement is what YouTube wants. That's how they make their money, through ads. The more you watch, the more money they make. So even if you dislike a video, in YouTube's eye, the video did the right thing. It grabbed your attention. If Cleopatra was Greek and Velma was white, the two IPs would have gone under the radar and would have drawn a fraction of the viewership and attention it did. The Little Mermaid trailer and its subsequent reaction videos attracted millions of views, which ironically made the film trend for weeks. In the era of social media, attention can translate into revenue via curiosity and hate watching. There's evidence that being controversial can at least spark initial interest. Velma was demolished by critics and fans, receiving a 7% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Yet it became the top trending show on HBO Max at launch. Demand for the series sparked 127% after its debut, despite or because of the backlash, making it the most in-demand new HBO Max show. The show would go on to produce a second season, but would be cancelled shortly after due to a drop in viewership. By the second series release, an Indian Velma was old news, and the buzz had died. 2016, Oscar Backlash and overcorrection. In 2015, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite exploded online after the Academy Awards gave 0 nominations to actors of color 2 years in a row. The following year, big names like Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith publicly spoke out, calling for actors of color to boycott the Oscars. Jada even urged Chris Rock to step down as the host of the 2016 ceremony. The backlash hit hard. Under intense public pressure, the Academy announced sweeping membership reforms to break up what many saw as the homogenous voting bloc of old white men. And it worked. Within a few years, the percentage of people of color in the Academy jumped significantly. By June 2020, the Academy proudly claimed it had exceeded its inclusion goals, with 36% of new members coming from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups. In 2011, actors of color made up just 10.5% of lead roles in top films. By 2016, it had only crept up about 13.9%, but by 2018 and 2019, that number had doubled to around 27%. Movies like Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians, and Get Out, each led by actors of color, became massive hits both commercially and critically, signaling what many hoped was a new normal in Hollywood. The Academy didn't stop there. In 2020, they announced new inclusion standards for films competing for Best Picture. Starting in 2024, movies must meet at least 2 out of 4 diversity criteria, such as casting underrepresented actors in major roles or hiring them behind the scenes. To some, this is a long overdue course correction after decades of exclusion, but to others, it feels like forced diversity. In fact, some Academy members, often older or more conservative, have pushed back hard on the new diversity criteria. One anonymous voter said, "It's completely ridiculous to make you cast a certain type of people just to get nominated." Actor Richard Dreyfuss took it even further, saying the new rules makes me vomit. PR and virtual signaling. Virtual signaling is when companies or individuals appear to make a moral stance purely for positive attention, without any real intent to address the underlying issue. It's about looking good, not doing good. Now let's be clear, strategic PR isn't new. Every major corporation in the world engages in it in some form or another. Whether it's cutting down on carbon emission, planting trees, donating to community projects, or promoting diversity, these moves are often carefully calculated to boost brand image. It's such a powerful tool that even nations like the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia have brought entire football clubs as part of what's been called sports washing, winning trophies to cleanse their own reputations. So when a company attaches itself to a feel-good movement, whether it's climate change, inclusivity, or social justice, you have to ask, do they really care, or are they just cashing in on a trend? Nestle's, the world's largest food company, proudly promotes its programs aimed at reducing the income gap for farming families and tackling child labor. Sounds wholesome, right? Here's the disturbing truth. Nestle's have been repeatedly accused of profiting from child slavery. Multiple investigations have shown that cacao plantations in West Africa, many of which supply Nestle, widely use child labor and even traffic child slaves. Back in 2001, Nestle promised to eliminate these abuses. Yet it wasn't until 2020, nearly 2 decades later, that Nestle launched its Income Accelerator program. In 2019, the company even admitted it couldn't guarantee its chocolate was free of child slave labor. So, what does that have to do with race swapping in movies? Some argue Hollywood is doing the same thing. by championing diversity, studios generate positive press and score social points. Behind the scenes, the status quo remains untouched. Sometimes race swapping may just be a calculated PR move without virtual signaling, and in some cases it's due to pressure. When one studio embraces race swapping, others may feel the need to do the same. It becomes a domino effect, driven not by belief but by the fear of falling behind in the public eye, even if the film flops or sparks backlash. Talent and star power over accuracy. Sometimes they care more about star power than sticking to a character's original race. In fact, Hollywood has a long history of choosing big names and strong talent over staying faithful to source material. In the past, this has often come at the cost of actors of color, casting white household names to play characters who were not white. Today, race swapping for star power is most common in action movies. Will Smith was cast as James West in Wild Wild West because he was one of the biggest box office stars at the time. When Idris Elba was cast as Heimdall in Thor, director Kenneth Branagh said, "If you have a chance to have a great actor in the part, everything else is irrelevant." Then there's Halle Berry. Disney faced huge backlash for casting a black woman, but the film went on to become one of Disney's most successful live-action remakes, with Halle's performance applauded by both the audience and critics. Director Rob Marshall says she was chosen after an extensive search because she brought the perfect mix of strength, passion, beauty, joy, and intelligence. Even industry insiders admit sometimes casting against the grain is just about finding the best performer or the biggest name, and not intention to race swap. Finally, here's one example that might surprise you. Morgan Freeman as Red is actually a race swap. In Stephen King's original book, Red is described as a white Irish man with red hair. Racist executives steering hate. The last reason is probably the most absurd, but there is a quote dwelling that believe this to be the reason for the race swapping we see today. The theory is essentially the race swapping and diversity is driven by ideological agendas among Hollywood elites. Studio executives are often wealthy white men and therefore are using diversity casting as a tool to oppose woke politics in society. A 2020 analysis found 91% of film studio heads and 93% of senior execs 1 tier below are also white. It is suggested that many of these men are likely to hold conservative and traditional views and see a rise in diversity as a direct opposition to their political views. The Atlantic noted that projects which change the ethnicity of beloved characters tend to face knee-jerk racist reactions to seeing well-known figures in a new context. A Forbes piece by Paul Tassai noted the emergence of PSYOP conspiracy theories around the poorly received woke reboots. Tassai wrote that HBO's Velma was so bad in fact that it's spawning conspiracy theories that Mindy Kaling made what is essentially a parody of what the right wing thinks the left wing comedy is like. Some suspect Velma's heavy-handed wokeness was intentionally exaggerated to make progressive storytelling look ridiculous. The backlash itself is often seized upon by commentators to portray progressive changes as unpopular and ridiculous. And when a beloved iconic character has a race swapped, angry fans will agree with the point, subtly influencing their views. It wouldn't be the first time that the elite have manipulated people. In 2016, Cambridge Analytica harvested personal data from over 87 million Facebook users. They used this data to micro-target users with highly specific, emotion-driven ads. The ads were tailored to each individual. Some people saw pro-Trump ads, others saw anti-Hillary fear messaging, depending on what would sway them personally. There are many ways in which we as individuals are subtly manipulated, and many believe that race swapping is to cause backlash and push back against progressive ideologies, maintaining the status quo.